The DNA reveals a ghost lineage, a population that vanished from most of Japan but survived in two mountain regions, Iga and Koga, the birthplace of every ninja clan in recorded history. Not a coincidence, a refuge. For over 1,000 years, the story said ninjas were farmers, commoners who developed espionage techniques to resist samurai oppression, simple people who turned necessity into skill. But DNA from modern descendants of the Iga and Koga regions tells a different story. These populations carry genetic markers that predate samurai culture by 3,000 years, markers that trace to the Jomon, the original inhabitants of Japan before rice agriculture arrived from the continent. The people who became ninjas were not adapting to a new world. They may have been survivors of an old one. Around 400 BCE, a new population entered Japan from the Korean peninsula, the Yayoi. They brought wet rice farming, bronze tools, hierarchical societies, and over the next 1,000 years, they spread across the Japanese archipelago. The genetic impact was massive. A 2017 study by Kanzawa Kiriyama and colleagues found that modern Japanese populations carry approximately 80 to 90% Yayoi ancestry. The original Jomon, hunter-gatherers who had lived in Japan for 15,000 years, was demographically overwhelmed. But not everywhere. In the mountains of central Honshu, two regions remained isolated, Iga Province and Koga District. Terrain so rugged that rice farming was impractical, valleys so remote that centralized control never fully penetrated. The Jomon populations in these areas didn't disappear entirely. They retreated, and their descendants may have become something history would later call Shinobi. The smoking gun is a Y-chromosome haplogroup, DM55. This genetic marker is almost exclusive to Japan. It traces directly to Jomon populations, and it appears at higher frequencies in Iga and Koga than in the rest of Japan. Research analyzing regional genetic variation shows that while most of Japan carries less than 15% Jomon ancestry, populations in the mountainous regions of central Honshu show concentrations that may reach 25 to 30% in some communities. Not a majority, but enough to suggest something different happened here. These regions did not experience the same level of Yayoi replacement. The mountains functioned as genetic refugia, a biological safe zone where earlier populations persisted while the lowlands transformed. And here's the connection. The historical records of ninja clans, the Hattori, the Momochi, the Fujibayashi, all trace their origins to these exact regions, not to the rice-growing plains where samurai culture developed, to the mountains where Jomon descendants survived. Samurai lineages are documented. Genealogies were maintained. Family trees trace back to noble ancestors, often claiming descent from imperial lines or continental immigrants. DNA evidence supports this pattern. Many samurai families carry Y-chromosome haplogroups common in Korea and China, O1b2 and O2. These are markers associated with the Yayoi expansion. Ninja lineages are different. They were oral, secretive, passed down through closed family networks that did not publicize their ancestry. And when modern genetic sampling reaches descendants of these regions, the pattern shifts. Haplogroup DM55 appears, the Jomon signal. Not in everyone. The populations mixed over centuries, but the concentration is higher than expected if these were just random farming communities. The implication, the people who became ninjas may not have been insurgent peasants. They could have been descendants of Japan's indigenous population using knowledge systems that predated samurai warfare by millennia. Think about what defines ninja techniques: stealth, survival in wilderness, knowledge of plants, poisons, and terrain, ability to operate in mountains that samurai on horseback could not navigate. These are not skills typically developed by rice farmers. These are skills associated with hunter-gatherers, people who lived in forests before agriculture, people whose survival depended on reading landscapes, tracking game, and avoiding threats. The Jomon were hunter-gatherers. For 15,000 years, they survived in the Japanese islands without agriculture. Their descendants, pushed into the mountains by the Yayoi expansion, would have retained those skills, adapted them, turned them into tools of resistance. The Yayoi brought samurai culture, centralized states, agricultural surplus that funded armies. The Jomon descendants in the mountains could not compete with that system on open ground, but in their terrain, they may have been the advantage, and they may have used it. The conflict between ninja and samurai was not just political, it may have been biological. The descendants of Japan's indigenous population resisting the descendants of continental immigrants who had replaced them everywhere else. Cultural resistance as genetic survival. Guerrilla warfare as a strategy of a population that could not win through conventional means but refused to disappear. There's another connection, the Yamabushi, mountain ascetics who lived in the same regions as ninja clans. They practiced esoteric Buddhism mixed with older animist traditions. They wandered mountains, performed rituals, and were believed to possess supernatural abilities. Genetic sampling from regions associated with the Yamabushi also shows elevated Jomon ancestry, the same pattern as ninja heartlands. This suggests the Yamabushi and ninja were not entirely separate groups. They may have been overlapping populations, both drawing from the same genetic and cultural reservoir, the Jomon descendants who survived in the mountains. The Yamabushi preserved spiritual and survival knowledge. The ninja weaponized it. But here's what makes the DNA even stranger. The Jomon signal in Iga and Koga isn't uniform. Some family lines show substantially higher Jomon ancestry. Others show much less. The clans that became ninja may have been a specific subset, the ones who maintained isolation, the ones who refused to mix. The supernatural abilities attributed to both groups, disappearing into forests, moving silently, and during extreme conditions, were not magic. They may have been techniques developed over millennia by people who lived in those environments, knowledge passed down through bloodlines that never fully integrated into samurai society. The invisibility of ninjas was not just tactical, it may have been genetic. A population that existed in the gaps of recorded history, because the people who wrote that history were the ones who had replaced them. Sample sizes from Iga and Koga remain limited. Most genetic studies of Japan focus on urban populations or broad regional averages. Detailed sampling of remote mountain communities is rare. The connection between haplogroup frequency and historical ninja clans is correlational, not definitively proven. Ninja clans originated in regions with higher Jomon ancestry, but direct DNA from confirmed historical ninja individuals has not been tested. Cultural transmission of techniques could have happened without direct genetic continuity. Knowledge can pass between populations through marriage, adoption, or teaching. The presence of Jomon DNA in these regions does not definitively prove every ninja descended from Jomon lineages, but the pattern is there. Geographic isolation, elevated Jomon markers, survival techniques that predate agriculture, oral traditions instead of written genealogies, all pointing in the same direction. The possibility remains strong. The ninja may not have been just spies. They may have been the remnants of Japan's first people, using ancient knowledge to resist the world that had tried to erase them. The Ghost Lineage did not disappear. It adapted. It hid. And it survived in the one place the New World could not reach, the mountains. Every samurai genealogy traces to emperors and continental nobility. Every ninja genealogy traces to mountains and silence. One group wrote history. The other survived in its margins. And the DNA suggests which one was there first. Genetic research on Japanese populations continues. Ancient DNA from Jomon sites is being sequenced. Modern sampling from isolated communities adds detail. Each study refines the picture. GenealogyX tracks the findings as they emerge. Subscribe to follow the evidence.